everything that's been involved in Hillary has been losses. You take a look. Even a race to Obama. She was going to beat Obama. I don't know who'd be worse. I don't know. How does it get worse? But she was going to beat. She was favored to win. And she got... She lost.
Now, a lot of you are seeing that and wondering, what did he say? Well, he took a term that is the Yiddish term for penis, and he referred to that in a verb form. Now, I will probably repeat said term later in the show, but my only point is that Donald Trump has said himself that that was not his intention, nor to have a demeaning reference to Hillary Clinton. A lot of folks aren't buying it. I wonder what Eric Trump thinks. His son, Eric, good to see you. The Executive Vice President of the Trump Organization. What did your father mean?
Listen, my father's a guy who speaks his mind, right? He's not a PC candidate. In fact, I think the first question of the first Fox debate hit exactly on this point, right? Is your father PC? He said this about this, and he said this about this. I mean, that's why people love him. He's willing to speak his mind. He's not the typical politician. Everything's in little sound bites. Everything's, telepromptered. It's been approved by 90 different people. He gets up there and says what's on his mind. And you know what? She does have a horrific track record. I mean, she talks about ISIS.
Would you have used in that language? Would you, for example, have made a verb out of that?
Listen, I don't think I would have had that big of a problem. We're not exactly bashful people. We're pretty direct. We're pretty open. We say what's on our mind. And hey, guess what? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We've got to be who you are. He's not a politician. He's a business guy. He came into politics 5 months ago for the first time, and hey, he's winning in every single one of the polls. He's doing an absolutely incredible job. But then Hillary will try and throw ISIS on him. Hey, the reason for ISIS is you, which is so ironic given that
whether they're making promotional videos out of this. But Eric, and we'll get into. We're showing a poll now. It's a national poll, and these things can be all over the map. This latest one shows it narrowing for your dad, and with Ted Cruz moving up very, very fast. Disavow me of the notion that your dad and Senator Cruz have a deal, an understanding, not to criticize each other. No,
well, first of all, it's not something I get into. I build hotels, I build buildings, right? I don't get into...
You're his son. You're his right-hand man.
No, my father's out to win this thing. I mean, he's absolutely out to win this thing, and I think he'll choose, the best running mate in the world, and I think he'll actually build a cabinet that will be comprised of the best people in the world.
Well, is that part of the thinking, that if he were to get the nomination, Ted Cruz would be his running mate?
No, I'm not saying that at all. Truthfully, I don't know, and I wouldn't even speculate, and I wouldn't say even if I did know.
But it's odd, that he has not criticized Cruz to the degree, certainly, he's had dust-ups with the other.
Cruz has been a great guy to him, and he's been a great guy to Cruz.
What did you think of the comments he made or thinking he was making off mic or off record?
I don't know. I thought they were a little bit benign, to tell you the truth, and I think everybody has, days to ask questions. I mean, how many times...
Because your father winced at it.
How many times do you say something that somebody takes you off guard, right? And I'm sure, hey, how many times does my father say something where somebody takes him out of context?
I never do. Well, mostly never.
Once.
Stepping back from it, though, in these polls and everything else, people, when they were polling the subject of whether your dad could make it to the White House, a good many of them see a very strong possibility of that. But then maybe owing to comments like this, and I'll take you at your word and your dad at his word that they were not intended to be, vulgar, that some might be embarrassed by that, and some might be embarrassed by a guy like that in the White House.
Yeah, I think he's done more for politics, literally, than anybody in a decade, and maybe much, 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 much longer. I mean, the guy has literally taken my generation, a younger generation. He's gotten them interested. If you look at the debates, right, you look at the amount of people who watch the debates. He's got 30 million people watching the debates. The old debates had 2 million, watching it. So that's actually a great thing for government. That's a great thing for our society. That's a great thing for engaging people in a political conversation. I mean, I told him he's already won this. I think he's going to win it. I think he's going to win the nomination. I think he's going to go all the way. Even if he didn't, I think he's done an immense service for this country. It's shown that a business guy can come and do great things. It's showing that somebody who hasn't been in the Senate or hasn't been this for their whole life can come and make a real difference, in terms of the country. And if you look back to some of our best presidents, who were they? They were the business guys. They were the guys who were incredibly successful.
Or the outside-the-box guys. We've got to remember that Abraham Lincoln was outside the box.
And a lot of them were. And they were phenomenal presidents. And by the way, we are the country that we are because of that. Sometimes you want a different character. The same thing over and over and over doesn't work.
Well, but to your own point, your dad's a different kind of character.
He's an amazing guy. He's an absolutely amazing guy.
Well, you're a good and loyal son. Well, T. Boone Pickens, though, is not so impressed. You probably heard that he thinks maybe we should have a panel to pre-screen candidates. He said, my big idea for 2016 is to put together a bipartisan screening committee that vets presidential candidates like we do anyone else applying for a job and recommends the best candidates possible. He goes on to say here, Eric, we have people running for president now who don't even have experience running a lemonade stand. Now, that one, I think, is clearly not your dad. He's talking about the latter part of that. Maybe Ben Carson, I guess. What do you think of that, that we have a screening process?
I mean, doesn't that fly in the face of democracy, first of all? I mean, second of all, I can tell you as a son who's in the background, on a campaign trail, following him around, going to these events, there is no better vetting process than being up on stage 24/7 with a microphone pointed at your face in front of 30,000 people day in and day out. That is your vetting process. And, you know, I have tremendous respect for any candidate who can get through that. Anybody, I mean, on either side, anybody who can get through the presidential process.
We were saying during the break, it's a grueling ride no matter whether you're left or right. I mean, having tracked it, sometimes they're in a dozen cities in a day, and I wouldn't know up from down.
But I think there's also an element that he can't be bought, right? I think there's a lot of billionaires out there that are pretty upset that they can't write a $20 million check and then have the guy, you know, controlled by, you know, their every mood. And I think that might be the very case here.
But now folks are beginning to say, because your father can't be bought, that maybe he has to start spending more of that money, and he has to commit more funds to get this race going, because in Iowa it's getting a little dicey for him. He's down by 8 points. That could change. But that he's got to start opening up his own wallet.
Listen, you look at these polls. There's polls that are, you know, a sample size of 200, right? You'll have him.
No, I know that. But
42,
that
and then
he's not spending enough of his money. Yeah. Do you think he will?
You know, I think I actually said something to a person, right? I mean, he's in first place across the country in just about every poll. I would say actually in every poll. And he spent the least amount of money. Then you have people who have...
No doubt. Do you think he has to, though, now he has to open that up and get revenue up?
Well, and by the way, he's certainly willing to, right? Yeah. I mean, he's got plenty of cash in the coffers, and, you know, if he needs to, you know, write that check, he'll certainly be willing to write the check. But if he's winning and he's doing this great, why bother?
It's a valid point. Let me